Hello, welcome to Lore Master's Lair. I'm your Lore Master, here today for another God video. We are currently in the middle of the Hellfire crisis, so I believe it is time I pulled out one ancestral deity which I have kept in my back pocket. One of the Goblin hero deities, Hadregash. Let's get started. First, as per usual, we start with information on where you can find the information on our bad dog himself. First, the different gods and magic books, as well as some information on divine deities, gives basic information on the great supreme chieftain boss. I'm going to be saying that a few times, probably going to mix up the words a few times. Anyway, but for full information, we find ourselves in the third book of the Iron Fang Invasion, titled Assault on Long Shadow. Now, the best place to start off is actually with a side tangent. The Goblin hero gods, or more precisely, either the Goblin Creator-Gods or the Bogus hero gods. They've been using the Goblin Creator-God since the Divine Mysteries, since they've added more hero gods. But anyway, they all were minor deities who were in service to Asmodeus in Hell before Lamashtu took them in and made them her own guard dogs. These deities found when they spilled blood, goblins would grow from the blood, and quickly cowed their creations into worshipping them alongside their benefactor Lamashtu. And the greatest of the four is today's main topic, Hadregash. One of the original four Goblin Creator-Gods, Hadregash was the one who saw power through organization, despite their people's chaos, that they could come together as tribes to accomplish goals. This eventually led to the rise of hobgoblins who took his teachings to heart, to organize and spread in ways other goblinoids had failed to before. And under his might, he and his followers believe they shall cover the entire lands through military conquest, forcing all other ancestries into slavery. One of the four Bogus who call themselves Creator-Gods, he appears as a typical example of his species, just with muscles rippling and with a constant cruel look in his sneer. Hobgoblins sometimes portray him as one of their own, wearing dark iron armor and accompanied by at least one chained slave. Of course, one does not just declare themselves the great supreme chieftain boss, which I think are those in the right. Anyway, that comes with the jealousy of their siblings, a betrayal which leads to a battle of 3-on-1, and eventually domination over the overwhelming odds, coming on top with but the raked claw marks across one's body, showing one truly deserves the peak position of goblinhood. Which of course is followed up by our second side tangent, the creature known as the Goblin Snake. These creatures are a combination of goblin and serpent, with speculation the creatures are some form of lesser naga, a creature that goblins also hold reverence towards. They are seen as the reincarnation of goblin heroes, and therefore highly respected in goblin society. Of course, they are vain, and only truly care about themselves. Hobgoblins make up a majority of the worshippers of Hadregash because of their militaristic bend. For followers of Hadregash, what is most important is to prove one is the strongest through conquest. Ambushing and dirty fighting is encouraged as long as the followers of the great supreme chieftain boss win. To these followers, there are only two kinds of people who exist: goblins and slaves. The priests of Hadregash function more like generals and priests, waking at dawn, parading in armor, and inspecting their troops for readiness. Of course, others instead focus on mining the slaves, working slaves to the bone, and eventually sacrificing any who no longer are able to work to their god. Hadregash does not have large temples or shrines devoted to him. Usually it's just a small altar to him that is kept in a chieftain's hut, where sacrifices of the best of spoils of war are made. And then, when Hadregash chooses a priest, these shrines are usually moved to the priest's hut or out in the open. This practice is seen in both goblin and hobgoblin villages. Hadregash, like his siblings, lives in Balsalface, adjacent to Lamashtu's own realm. The entire realm looks closer to hell than the abyss, made of wastelands and brimstone. Hadregash's direct region of control is Fort Slaughter, the largest of the territories, and where his own chosen goblinoids train for a future, unknown war. Before we go on, we have one more goblinoid to speak on with Side Tangent 3. Last week we were in Hongrot. This week, as if I planned it, I did not, we talk on the Dokembi. The real-world equivalent of these goblinoid cousins are also known as Korean Oni or ogres. They are different from gods and ghosts, but are still spiritual beings, and they are make a physical body by possessing inanimate objects. Some sources say they are harmless but mischievous, just playing pranks and wrestling others, while others, of course, are more malevolent. Regardless, they are known to have immense spiritual power and a love for pickled food, no wonder they were made cousins of goblins in Pathfinder. Now, on to information. As one guesses, it is goblin tribes and hobgoblin nations where worship of any goblin hero god can be found. For holidays, the only real one is the Rite of New Blood, a kind of war games which comes about when an old chief dies of old age, and the grace of the tribe works to prove who deserves to be the new one. For holy texts, goblins are against writing, but many of the first songs which record goblin history tell tales of the hero gods. For other deities, of course, his siblings are his main allies, even if they believe in different methods of goblinoids to achieve dominance. Lamashtu is their mother, though is not impressed by the orderly faith of the supreme chieftain. Likewise, the old boss Asmodeus finds their kind too chaotic and thirsts too much for blood. Finally, in Kaoling, where the Tian deities and goblinoid culture meet, the faith of Hadregash and General Susumu will often fight, usually over which battle strategies they prefer than doctrine. But when orders are issued, they will stand in line and fight side by side without question. Ending off, we find our final side tangent, the other goblin deities. Every racial deity group is different, with goblins being unique as they have the ability to create gods, apparently. Get enough together to worship, and any creature becomes divine. This might show why Lamashtu is the first demon to achieve full godhood, and is 100% why the creator gods show up to slaughter certain creatures who gain enough of a reputation among goblins. It is still jealousy, but more. One other goblin hero gods to note are the prankster god Kong, the big eater brother, Burlap, the rememberer of fallen heroes known as Teki Strongut, and Zugero, the deity of naps. Which brings us to the end of today's video. Now we will have to see in the future of both Isco and Goblin communities, but the greatest commander of their kind still will keep being a corrupting background in the foreseeable future. But for next time, we will actually be looking at a monster from elsewhere. See you then.